So to cut a long story short, I've got lots of data going back a number of years, and I regularly archive data, and I archived the data for the 2010 World Cup so that I could have a look at it in 2014 and remind myself what the World Cup was like. And I've been trying to write this up all week, but it's such a long and laborious process to write up, and I don't really have the time anyway, especially when the article I wrote for Betfair, they changed at the last minute and I had to write another one, so that was not helpful. Such is life. But anyway, I thought, surely the easiest thing to do is just to show you the spreadsheet with the data on it, and you can have a look at the figures that I'm looking at as well. So hopefully this will be helpful for you. First thing to note is that across all the World Cup markets in 2010, the total match bet turnover was 2.4 billion. Yeah, pretty significant. Before the match started, it was 1.2-ish billion, and you can also see there was 1.1 billion matched in play. And I can see some of you sort of going, well, that doesn't equal 2.4 billion. There is a in-betweeny market that is neither pre-off or in play. I forget what it's called now, but that accounts for the difference in there. But basically, if you look at the figures, I mean, if we basically add those two, if we do that divided by that plus that, you can see 52%. So 52% of volume was matched before the off, and the rest was in play. So interesting. And obviously the numbers are pretty large as well. So very interested to see how the numbers stack up this year. I'm going to keep a close eye on that. You can see I've sorted and looked at all of the different variations on things that happened to qualify, the minimum and maximum odds, and all of these areas within here. So I've been looking at over and unders, and just basically, what happened, how much money was there, and stuff like that. But I've summarized it for you on another sheet, which has some of the more relevant information available on it. But if you look at the number of matches that were played and order them in terms of turnover, this is what happened pre-off basically. So you can see actually there's a whole range of different matches here and odds at which they were lost at in play. But you can also see that the biggest match before the off was actually the semi-final between Germany and Spain, which is a surprise. I thought it would be the final, but in fact the final turnover slightly less than the semi-final. And also, if you look at the dominance of England, England is right at the top of this list. What I've done on a separate sheet here is I've organised these so it's easier to see, so that you can understand and see how this came about. So if you look at total amount of money matched, you can see that the semi-final reached a total of 38 million thereabouts. Let's just make this a little bit bigger so it's obviously easier and clearer to see. Yeah, 38,150,500 and something. The filter's in the way there at the moment. If I remove the filter, we'll see that. But you can also see, England appeared here, Uruguay appeared in here a few times, England, and so on and so on and so on. And if you break these down into the individual matches and group stages, this gives you a little bit clearer view on how the total volume was matched. So again, you can see, including pre-off and in play, the final produced turnover of 36.7 rather million. The semi-final was 38.1. But basically, if we group these together, you can see that at the semi-final stage, the markets turned over an average of 35 million in total. At the quarter-final stages, it was 25 million. In the second round matches, it was 20 million. And in the group stages, you can see the average turnover was about 17 million. But you can see there's quite a wide variation, because Nigeria v South Korea, that huge betting heat in the 2010 World Cup, only turned over 6.8 million. But when we get to some of the bigger matches, then you can see they turned over much more. And of course, look at this. In the group stages, England v Algeria, England v the USA, and the other one is here somewhere as well. There we go, Slovenia v England was right up on that list as well. So necessarily, you can see that there's a fair amount of activity on England matches during the group stages, and much less on matches that are not considered important by the population of England. So that was quite interesting as well. Couple of notes here. Very badly spelt notes. One all Gurup. But this is basically some of the lowest odds that were traded in the 2010 World Cup. So you can see here low odds of 101 were reached in the New Zealand v Slovakia match, and it was a 1-all to New Zealand. I'll correct that. In the 93rd minute they created that, so there was a 101 turned over in the 2010 World Cup, which was quite interesting. You can see actually the biggest friends that we had in 2010 were the USA, because in their match against Slovenia they scored in the 82nd minute. Against us, we had that Robert Green calamity, which basically meant that England turned over at low odds. And against Algeria, they scored in the 91st minute. So USA were unbelievable in 2010. It'd be interesting to see if we have another team that performs similar miracles this time around. But you can also see that England did their bit by completely failing to dominate the group stages, and that allowed a number of small odds to get turned over as well. So yeah, some interesting information coming off of that. If you look at the to qualify market, the 0 at the top here represents a team that failed to qualify, and the 1 represents the teams that did qualify. So if you actually look at this, you can see in Group A, France failed to qualify at 133 and South Africa at 189, but Mexico and Uruguay did. Argentina did, but Nigeria didn't here. England did, but Slovenia didn't. And of course these include in-play traded odds as well, so don't get distracted by that. Group D, Germany did, but Serbia didn't. So you can see, generally there's one team that's not qualifying that should qualify. So Cameroon, Denmark were odds on here, but didn't qualify. Japan and the Netherlands did, but of course Japan was at a huge price. So you can see there's, Italy crashed out as well, of course, last time round. Maybe a portent for 2014, hopefully. No offence to Italian customers, of course. But you can see here there are some interesting stats that come out of the to qualify market. Seeing something at heavy odds on to qualify doesn't necessarily mean that the team will. And there's quite a discrepancy from it. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just quickly rework this, and we'll have a look at the percentage of odds-on teams that did or didn't qualify. So give me a couple of seconds, and I will pause this momentarily and return with that data. So I've recut this data to make it a bit clearer to you. But you can see that a lot of odds-on shots went out at the group stages. And if we add up, there are obviously 32 teams by the look of it. And if you, I'm hoping that there are 32 teams this time around as well. But if you're looking at these stats, you can see that the number 10 here, and that's counting the number of odds-on teams that went out at group stages or traded at odds-on. Some of them at heavy odds-on, you can see here, and went out. So 62% of teams that went out at the group stages were odds-on shots, and some of them were at very short odds. So that's surprising. But I'll tell you what my angle on this is. You're effectively, they call it a group stage, but it's effectively 3 knockout matches, really, isn't it? Because if you get one positive result out of that, you defend to the death and try and sneak a goal, then you've actually got a fair chance of qualifying. So I'm not surprised to see a stat like this, and I think that this may be repeated this year. You can see of the 16 that did qualify, then 7 of them were traded at odds on, so a smaller number. So you can see the odds were completely out in terms of qualification, and probably mathematically they were correct in terms of the way that people were calculating through the match. But I think that, and we've seen it repeatedly, even when England qualified and got all the way through to the final in Italia 90. I think it was a 0-0 or 1-1, and I'm not even sure if we won any of the group matches. But it's very, very tight at the group stage, and I think it's possible for people to have a bad result, confidence to dip, get a draw the next time, and suddenly they're facing elimination. So, I think this was one of the more interesting parts of the data. The to qualify sheet shows up all sorts of interesting data about what happened in 2010. And it's very similar in 2006 as well. I don't have data going back further than that, because obviously Betfair only came into existence in June 2000. So, and in the early days, there just wasn't this quality of data, and I wasn't collecting data as much as I do now. So I've only really got 2 World Cups to go on, but it's notable that on both 2006 and 2010, there have been a number of shock, in inverted commas, eliminations from the group stages. I think we may see that again this year. So yeah, the to qualify stuff is interesting. The lowest price traded in play is interesting, but that's obviously very dependent upon what's going on in the match. You're going to have to be the judge of that, but it's interesting to look at. But also you can see from the data that we have here, the turnover in this competition is significant, and that generates a huge amount of interest within the market, and that is going to be one of my main plays, really, is that because of the amount of liquidity in the market, I reckon I can raise stakes and be a lot more aggressive, and therefore I should be able to return more during the World Cup than I can on pretty much any of the other football competitions. So I've got off to a decent start, and I'm going to start raising stakes and see how far I can push it. So whatever you're doing in the World Cup, have a good one. If you're interested in learning more about BetAngel, its tools and the opportunities they present, why not visit betangel.com today to download a free trial.